I'm Rebecca, 21, a finance major who's always planned meticulously for my future. When my parents betrayed me by giving my college fund to my brother Marcus for his latest startup scheme, they had no idea I'd seen it coming. While they thought they'd left me stranded, I'd quietly been preparing for this possibility all along. Before I share how I outsmarted my own parents, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe if family financial betrayals make your blood boil too. Growing up in suburban Boston in a modest 3-bedroom colonial, I learned early on that financial security wasn't something to take for granted. My father Robert worked as a mid-level manager at an insurance company, while my mother Eleanor taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Just comfortable enough that with careful planning, my parents assured me I could attend college without crushing debt. When I turned 8, my parents made a big announcement over a special dinner of my favorite lasagna. They had opened a college fund for me, and would be contributing to it monthly until I graduated high school. "This money is for your education, Rebecca," my father said solemnly. "We want you to have opportunities we didn't have." I remember feeling so important, so secure in their promise. Each birthday and Christmas, relatives would add to my college fund instead of giving me toys I'd outgrow. It became a family tradition, this investment in my future. Meanwhile, my brother Marcus, for years my senior, couldn't have been more different from me. Where I was methodical and cautious, Marcus was bursting with million-dollar ideas that never quite materialized. At 19, he dropped out of community college to start a food delivery service specializing in late-night snacks for college students. 6 months and $4,000 of my parents' money later, he abandoned it when he couldn't compete with established apps. When Marcus turned 22, he convinced my parents to fund his handcrafted furniture business. He built exactly 3 tables, sold one at a loss, and pivoted to social media consulting within 8 months. Another $7,000 gone. His third venture, an artisanal hot sauce company, actually produced a product, bottles of nearly inedible spicy concoction that still occupy a shelf in our garage. That endeavor cost my parents close to $10,000. Through all these failures, my parents never wavered in their emotional and financial support of Marcus. "He just hasn't found his calling yet," my mother would say. "He's a creative soul." My father would add, as if creativity and business success were somehow mutually exclusive. I took a different approach to my future. While Marcus was burning through my parents' savings, I was babysitting for neighborhood families, stashing every dollar I could in my own savings account. I read financial literacy books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 13. I took a personal finance elective in high school and joined the investment club. For my 16th birthday, instead of asking for a car like my friends, I requested a session with a financial advisor. My dream was to attend Northeastern University's business program. Their cooperative education program would allow me to alternate semesters of academic study with semesters of full-time employment, giving me real-world experience alongside my degree. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, served as treasurer for 3 student organizations, and volunteered as a math tutor to strengthen my application. The day my acceptance letter arrived, complete with a merit scholarship covering about 30% of the tuition, should have been one of pure celebration. But even then, there were worrying signs. My mother's congratulations seemed forced, and my father immediately started talking about exploring other options and considering state schools. When I reminded them about my college fund, they exchanged a glance I couldn't quite interpret. "We'll discuss the finances later," my father said, changing the subject abruptly. "Let's just enjoy your acceptance for now." In retrospect, I should have pushed harder that day. But I was so happy about being accepted that I ignored the pit forming in my stomach. After all, they had promised me this money for 13 years. They wouldn't really go back on such a fundamental promise, would they? May arrived, and with it, the deadline to commit to Northeastern with a deposit. I'd already begun the exciting process of college preparation, researching affordable apartments near campus, connecting with potential roommates through the university's matching service, and planning which personal items I'd need to purchase for my new life. Each time I brought up accessing my college fund to make these arrangements, my parents found a new way to postpone the conversation. "Let's talk about it this weekend," my mother would say, only for the weekend to arrive with a sudden emergency at her school requiring her attention. I need to review some documents first, my father would claim. Yet somehow those documents were never quite ready for review. The deadline loomed just 3 days away when I returned home early from my part-time job at the local library, due to a minor migraine. The house should have been empty. Both my parents typically worked until 5. And Marcus had supposedly moved to his own apartment 6 months earlier, though he still appeared for most family dinners and whenever his fridge was empty. As I quietly entered through the back door, planning to take some medication and lie down, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. My parents and Marcus all speaking in hushed, serious tones. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard my name. Rebecca doesn't need to know the full amount, my father was saying. We can tell her there was always less in the account than she thought. But what if she asks to see the statements? My mother sounded anxious. She's always been so detail-oriented. We'll say we didn't keep them, Marcus replied casually. Most people don't keep financial records that long anyway. I still don't feel right about this, my mother said. That money was for her education. And now it's for my education, Marcus countered. Just in the real world instead of some classroom. Besides, my app will help college students manage their schedules and find campus resources. So technically it's still going toward education. Your sister worked hard for that scholarship. My mother persisted. She's counting on this money. She can take out loans like everyone else, my father said dismissively. Marcus has a real opportunity here. This app could be the next big thing, and the investor he found is willing to match whatever we put in. We'd be foolish not to support him. Once I'm successful, I'll pay for the rest of Rebecca's college, Marcus added. She'll end up better off in the long run. I stood frozen, blood rushing in my ears. The college fund that had been promised to me since I was 8 years old, the fund that relatives had contributed to, that I had planned my entire future around, was being handed to my brother for yet another dubious business venture. And they were strategizing about how to lie to me. I must have made a sound. Because suddenly the kitchen fell silent. Then my father called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" I considered sneaking back out the door, processing this betrayal in private. But something inside me snapped. I stepped into the kitchen doorway, facing my family with tears already forming. "Rebecca!" My mother stood abruptly, her face draining of color. "We didn't hear you come in. Are you feeling okay? You look pale." "I'm not okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "I just heard everything. You're taking my college fund and giving it to Marcus? After promising me for 13 years that it was for my education." Marcus at least had the decency to look embarrassed, studying the kitchen tile intently. My father, however, immediately went on the offensive. "You weren't meant to find out this way," he said. As if the problem was the delivery of the news rather than the betrayal itself. "We were going to discuss it with you properly." "Discuss what?" "How you're breaking your promise. How you're prioritizing Marcus's 5th business failure over my education." "There's nothing to discuss. That money was for my college tuition." "Rebecca, try to understand," my mother pleaded. "Your brother has found an investor who's willing to match our contribution. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Every one of his ideas has been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I countered. "And every single one has failed. This time is different," Marcus finally spoke, looking up at me. "I've done market research. I have a solid business plan. The app fills a real need. So does my tuition bill. I'm supposed to send him my deposit in 3 days. What am I supposed to do now?" "You got that scholarship," my father pointed out. "And there are student loans. Most college students have debt when they graduate. It's normal." "Normal? You promised me I wouldn't have to worry about that. You told every relative who contributed to my fund that you were saving for my education. Was that all a lie?" "Of course not," my mother said quickly. "We did save for your education. But circumstances change. Marcus needs this chance. And I don't need my college degree? Is that what you're saying?" "No one is saying that," my father's voice grew stern. "But Marcus has real potential to succeed with this venture. Once he does, he'll help pay for your schooling. You'll actually be better off." I laughed bitterly. "Right. Just like all his other businesses were going to make us rich. How much of my money are you giving him?" My parents exchanged glances before my father reluctantly answered. $48,000. The room spun slightly. That was nearly the entire fund, money that had been accumulating since I was a child. Money that relatives had contributed to specifically for my education. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "I really can't believe you would do this to me." I turned and ran to my room, ignoring their calls to come back and talk further. I threw myself on my bed, sobbing with a mixture of rage, betrayal, and despair. My future, which had seemed so secure and well-planned, now lay in ruins around me. Northeastern's deposit deadline loomed, and my safety net had just been yanked away without warning. As I lay there, crying into my pillow, a memory suddenly surfaced through my distress. A conversation from 3 years ago that would change everything about this situation. I sat up slowly, wiping my eyes, as a plan began to form in my mind. Perhaps all was not lost after all. 3 years earlier, just after my 18th birthday, my grandmother Martha invited me to lunch at her favorite bistro downtown. Grandma Martha had worked as a financial advisor before retiring, and I'd always admired her independence and wisdom. She ordered us both the French onion soup, then leaned across the table with unusual seriousness. "Rebecca, now that you're 18, there are some things I think you should know about family and money," she began, stirring her soup thoughtfully. "I've seen too many situations where promises were broken and dreams derailed because people trusted blindly." I remember being confused by her tone. "Are you talking about Mom and Dad? They've always been good with money." Grandma Martha sighed. "Your parents are good people who love you very much. But I've watched how they handle Marcus's business ventures, and I'm concerned about your college fund." She proceeded to tell me about my cousin Thomas, whose parents had used his college savings to bail out his older sister's failed real estate investment, and my Aunt Patricia, whose parents had borrowed from her wedding fund for a family vacation, promising to repay it, a repayment that never fully materialized. "I'm not saying your parents would intentionally harm your future," Grandma Martha assured me. "But I've learned over decades in financial planning that when family and money mix, everyone should have a backup plan. Even the most loving parents can make decisions that hurt their children financially, usually believing they're doing what's best for the family as a whole. At first, I'd been reluctant to believe my parents could ever betray me that way. They'd been so consistent about my college fund, so supportive of my academic goals. But Grandma Martha was insistent. At minimum, you should know exactly how much is in your college fund, where it's held, and what conditions exist for withdrawals. Information is protection." Rebecca. After lunch, she connected me with her former colleague, Janet Williams, who still worked as a financial advisor. Janet agreed to meet with me pro bono as a favor to my grandmother. During our first meeting, Janet helped me understand the structure of my college fund. It was a custodial account under the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act UTMA, which meant the money was technically mine, but my parents controlled it until I reached the age of majority, which in our state was 21. The account required both parents' signatures for withdrawals. "So I have no control over my own college fund until I'm 21, I had said glumly. "And I'll need it before then." "That's the current situation," Janet agreed. "But that doesn't mean you can't take steps to protect yourself. First, start documenting everything. Request copies of all statements for the account. Keep records of every conversation about the fund." She also advised me to open my own separate account at a different bank, one my parents had no affiliation with. "Start building your own financial safety net, however small," she advised. "Every dollar you save independently is a dollar you control completely." Over the following 3 years, I followed Janet's advice meticulously. I worked part-time throughout high school and saved aggressively. I lived frugally, skipping the shopping trips and restaurants my friends enjoyed. Every birthday check, every graduation gift, every dollar I earned babysitting or shelving books at the library went into my secret account. More importantly, I created a paper trail for my college fund. I periodically asked innocent questions about the account and took notes afterward, dating each entry. Dad mentioned the college fund balance is growing nicely, estimated $45,000 currently, or Mom said the college fund should cover most of Northeastern's tuition for 4 years. I requested statements twice a year, explaining I was practicing my financial literacy skills for my investment club. My parents provided them without suspicion. Why would they worry when I wasn't due to access the money for years? I even recorded a video on my 18th birthday of my parents reiterating their promise. "So now that I'm 18, tell me again about my college fund." I had prompted casually as my mother served birthday cake. "It's still growing," my father had replied cheerfully, unaware of my true purpose. By the time you're ready for college, it should be enough to cover most of your expenses at a good school. That money is specifically for your education, Rebecca. We've been putting it aside since you were little. My mother had nodded in agreement. It's your future. We wouldn't use it for anything else. That video, along with the statements, notes, and email exchanges, went into a secure folder both in my cloud storage and in a physical form at Grandma Martha's house. Janet reviewed my documentation periodically, helping me strengthen my position. I feel dishonest sometimes, planning for my parents to betray me, I had confessed to Janet during one of our meetings. They might never break their promise. Think of it as an insurance policy. Janet had replied kindly. You buy home insurance hoping your house never burns down. This is the same concept, protection you hope you'll never need. By the time I received my acceptance to Northeastern, my secret account contained nearly $20,000, not enough for 4 years of college, but enough for the first year while I figured out other options. And my documentation of the official college fund was thorough enough to potentially pursue legal action if necessary. Now, as I sat on my bed after discovering my parents' betrayal, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sorrow. Grandma Martha had been right. The protection I'd hoped never to need had become essential. I picked up my phone and sent 2 text messages, one to Grandma Martha and one to Janet. It was time to activate my backup plan. The next morning, I met with Grandma Martha and Janet at the local coffee shop, away from my parents' ears. I'd barely slept, alternating between crying and refining my strategy. Janet reviewed my documentation one more time while Grandma Martha held my hand supportively. You've built a strong case, Rebecca, Janet confirmed. The consistent statements from your parents that this money was specifically for your education, the regular contributions from relatives designated for your college expenses, the pattern of communication, it all creates a clear picture. So what do I do now? I asked, stirring my untouched coffee. You have several options, Janet explained. You could pursue legal action immediately, but that would likely permanently damage your relationship with your parents. You could attempt to negotiate, using the threat of legal action as leverage. Or you could simply walk away, use your personal savings, and cut financial ties with your family going forward. I don't want to sue my parents, I said quietly. But I can't just let them take my future away either. Grandma Martha squeezed my hand. Then negotiation is your best path. Present your evidence calmly and give them a chance to make this right. We spent the next hour preparing my approach. Janet helped me organize my documentation chronologically and suggested specific language to use that would be firm but not antagonistic. Grandma Martha offered to be present as moral support, and as a respected elder family member, whose presence might encourage my parents to take the situation more seriously. That evening, I asked my parents for a family meeting, including Marcus. They seemed relieved that I was willing to talk, probably expecting tears and eventually resignation to their decision. Instead, they found themselves facing a prepared adversary. I had set up the dining room table with organized folders of documentation. Grandma Martha sat beside me, her presence clearly surprising my parents. Mom? What are you doing here? My mother asked, confusion evident. I'm here to support Rebecca, Grandma Martha replied calmly. And to make sure everyone in this family understands the seriousness of what's happening. My father frowned. This is a private family matter, Martha. Rebecca is understandably upset. But we're her parents, and we're making the best decision for our family as a whole. That's why I've asked everyone to meet, I interjected, keeping my voice steady. Because I want to be clear about exactly what's happening here. I opened the first folder, containing bank statements. This is the college fund that was established for me when I was 8 years old. Every statement indicates it's designated for my education. I pulled out the next set of documents. These are birthday cards from relatives who contributed to my college fund over the years. Note how each one specifically mentions my education. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca, we understand you're disappointed. I'm not disappointed, Mom. I'm preparing to take legal action if necessary. That got their attention. My father's face flushed red while my mother paled. Marcus looked between us all, clearly shocked by the turn of events. Legal action? My father scoffed. That's ridiculous. You're our daughter. We made decisions we believe are in the family's best interest. Let me show you something else. I played the video from my 18th birthday, where they clearly stated the money was specifically for my education and wouldn't be used for anything else. As their own voices filled the room, my parents grew increasingly uncomfortable. When the video ended, I continued, I've consulted with a financial advisor who specializes in cases like this. She believes I have sufficient evidence to pursue a case against you for breach of fiduciary duty and verbal contract. You've been planning this? My mother asked, hurt evident in her voice. Collecting evidence against your own parents? I've been protecting myself, I corrected. Grandma Martha advised me years ago to keep good records of my college fund. I didn't want to believe I'd ever need them. Marcus finally spoke up. Look, Rebecca, I had no idea you had documented all this. I knew the money was for your college. But Mom and Dad assured me it would be fine, that they'd figure something out for you. Figure something out? I repeated incredulously. Like what? Loans that I'll be paying off for decades? While you get a free ride for your 5th business attempt. It's not like that, Marcus protested. This startup has real potential. I've got an actual investor interested. Who is this investor? Grandma Martha asked pointedly. Have you vetted them thoroughly? Seen proof of funds? Marcus hesitated. Well, it's a guy I met at a networking event. He's still finalizing some details on his end. So there's no actual investor yet, I translated. Just another empty promise. My father stood abruptly. That's enough. I won't be interrogated in my own home. Rebecca, I'm disappointed that you would go behind our backs like this, consulting lawyers and financial advisors without even talking to us first. I tried talking to you, I reminded him. Yesterday, when I discovered you were planning to lie to me about my own money. And even before that. Every time I brought up accessing my college fund for Northeastern, you changed the subject. We just needed time to figure out how to explain the situation, my mother said weakly. You mean how to justify taking my money, I corrected. The money that's been promised to me for 13 years. The money relatives gave specifically for my education. The conversation continued to escalate. My mother began crying, claiming I didn't understand how hard they tried to support both their children. My father grew increasingly defensive, insisting that as parents, they had the right to make financial decisions for the family. Marcus alternated between defending his business plan and looking genuinely remorseful about the situation. Finally, I laid out my ultimatum. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my college fund intact and available for my tuition as promised. If you've already withdrawn money, you will replace it before the Northeastern deposit is due in 3 days. If you don't, I'll be pursuing legal action with the help of Janet Williams, who has agreed to represent me. Who is Janet Williams? My father demanded. My former colleague, Grandma Martha answered. One of the best financial attorneys in Boston. My mother gasped. Martha, you've been helping her with this? Against your own son. I've been helping her protect herself, Grandma Martha replied firmly. Which is what you should have been doing all along. That money was for Rebecca's education. Taking it now when she's about to start college isn't just financially irresponsible. It's a betrayal of trust. The word betrayal hung heavily in the air. My father's anger seemed to deflate somewhat, replaced by a flicker of shame. My mother wiped her tears, looking torn between defense and guilt. Marcus broke the tense silence. Mom. Dad, Rebecca's right. That money was always for her college. It's not fair to take it now. He turned to me. I'm sorry, sis. I got excited about the business opportunity and didn't think about what this would mean for you. I wanted to believe his apology was sincere. But Marcus had always been charming when it served his purposes. Still, it was something. The meeting ended without a clear resolution. My parents asked for time to discuss privately, and I agreed to give them until the following evening, still leaving a day before my deposit was due. I spent the night at my friend Amanda's house, unable to face staying under the same roof as my parents. Amanda listened sympathetically as I recounted the entire situation. I can't believe they would do that to you, she said, shaking her head. You've always been so responsible, and Marcus is, well, a 30-year-old teenager? I suggested bitterly. Pretty much. Remember when he borrowed my dad's power tools for that furniture business and returned them all damaged? No apology, no offer to pay for repairs. Amanda paused. Do you really think you'll have to sue your parents? I hope not, I admitted. But I'm prepared to if I have to. This is my future we're talking about. As I tried to sleep on Amanda's trundle bed that night, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Had collecting evidence against my own parents been an overreaction? But then I remembered the conversation I'd overheard, their casual dismissal of my education, their willingness to lie to me, and my resolve strengthened again. Sometimes, protecting yourself means being prepared for the worst, even from those who should have your best interests at heart. The next evening, I returned home to find not just my parents and Marcus waiting, but a full family gathering. My grandparents on both sides, my father's brother Uncle David and his wife Aunt Susan, my mother's sister Aunt Patricia and her husband Uncle Mike, all seated uncomfortably in our living room as if for an intervention, or a tribunal. "What is this?" I asked, pausing in the doorway. "We thought it would be good to discuss this as a family," my father explained, his tone carefully neutral, "since it affects all of us." I glanced at Grandma Martha, who gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. She'd known about this gathering then and didn't think it was a trap. I took a deep breath and entered, taking the empty armchair that seemed to have been left for me directly across from my parents. "Before we start," my father continued, "we want everyone to understand the situation fully. Your mother and I established a college fund for Rebecca years ago. Recently, we made the decision to invest that money in Marcus's new business venture instead, believing it would ultimately benefit the entire family, including Rebecca." "That's not quite accurate, Robert," Grandma Martha interrupted calmly. "You didn't invest the money. You were planning to give it to Marcus with no legally binding agreement for repayment, no equity contract, no terms whatsoever, while telling Rebecca there was less in the account than there actually was." My relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Clearly, my father had presented a sanitized version of events before I arrived. "Is that true?" my grandfather asked, looking troubled. "We were going to work out the details," my father said defensively. "The important thing is that Marcus has a genuine opportunity here, with an investor willing to match funds." "About that investor," I interjected. "Marcus admitted yesterday that there's no committed investor yet, just someone he met at a networking event who expressed interest." More uncomfortable shifting among my relatives. Uncle David, who worked as a corporate lawyer, leaned forward with interest. "Rebecca, your grandmother mentioned you've been documenting the college fund. May I see what you have?" I opened my folder and passed him the organized evidence, the statements, the cards from relatives, transcripts of conversations, and finally the video. Uncle David reviewed them methodically, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of acknowledgement. When he finished, he looked at my parents with clear disapproval. "Robert, Eleanor, this is troubling. Based on what I'm seeing here, Rebecca has a strong case that this money was explicitly and repeatedly promised for her education. Several of these contributions came from family members with that specific understanding." He gestured to my grandparents and aunts and uncles. "Were any of you aware that your contributions might be used for Marcus's business instead of Rebecca's education?" A chorus of no and head shaking followed. My maternal grandmother spoke up. "We always understood that money was for Rebecca's college. That's why we contributed to it instead of giving her other gifts over the years." My father looked increasingly cornered. "We're her parents. We have the legal right to make financial decisions." "Actually," Uncle David interrupted, "that's not entirely clear in this case. Given the documented pattern of specific designation for education, the contributions from extended family for that express purpose, and Rebecca's reliance on these representations in her college planning, there's a strong argument for promissory estoppel here." "English, please, David," my mother requested weakly. "It means you made a promise that Rebecca reasonably relied on to her detriment. And courts generally don't look kindly on that kind of reversal, especially with such extensive documentation." Uncle David turned to me. "Have you already consulted an attorney, Rebecca?" "A financial advisor who specializes in these cases," I confirmed. "She believes I have grounds to pursue legal action if necessary." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Then my father dropped the bombshell. "It may be too late for that. We've already transferred $25,000 to Marcus's business account." The room erupted in exclamations of shock and dismay. My mother buried her face in her hands while Marcus looked at the floor. "When?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "When did you do this?" Last week, my father admitted. Before you found out. And the rest of the money? Grandma Martha asked sharply. Still in the college fund. We were going to transfer it after telling Rebecca. I turned to Marcus. So you already have $25,000 of my college money? What have you done with it? Marcus fidgeted uncomfortably. I've spent some of it already. On development costs, equipment, marketing materials. How much? Uncle David pressed. About $8,000 so far. I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. They'd actually done it, taken my money and spent it, before even talking to me. The betrayal felt complete, devastating. I trusted you, I said through my tears, looking at my parents. For 13 years I believed you when you said you were securing my future. I worked so hard for that scholarship to reduce the burden to make you proud. And all along, you were just waiting for the right moment to give my future to Marcus. The room was heavy with tension and emotion. Even relatives who had arrived sympathetic to my parents' position were now looking at them with disappointment and concern. There's something else you should know, I said finally, wiping my eyes. My moment had come. The revelation I'd been saving. I suspected something like this might happen. Not because I didn't trust you, but because Grandma Martha taught me to always protect myself financially, even from family. I pulled out another folder, this one containing statements from my personal savings account. I've been saving every dollar I could for the past 3 years. I have nearly $20,000 in my own account, enough to cover my first year at Northeastern while I figure out scholarships and other options for the remaining years. My parents looked stunned. My father's mouth actually dropped open. I also have this, I continued, pulling out an official-looking document. A letter from Janet Williams detailing the potential legal consequences of misappropriating funds specifically designated for educational purposes, with particular attention to contributions made by extended family members. She's prepared to file on my behalf if the money isn't returned to my college fund immediately. Uncle David took the letter, skimmed it, and raised his eyebrows. Janet Williams is representing you? She's formidable. This is a very comprehensive analysis of the situation. So what does this mean? My Aunt Patricia asked. Are you actually going to sue your parents, Rebecca? I looked directly at my parents, feeling a strange calm despite the chaos of emotions inside me. I don't want to. I love you both despite everything. But this is my future, and I won't let anyone take it from me. Not even you. So yes, if the money isn't returned to my college fund, I will pursue every legal option available to me. My declaration hung in the air. The most direct challenge I'd ever issued to my parents' authority. The little girl who had always followed rules, always trusted their judgment, was gone. In her place stood a young woman ready to fight for her own future. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Marcus stood up. I'll return the money, he announced. All of it, what I've spent and what's left. I'll figure out another way to fund my business. Marcus, no, my father began. We agreed. It's not right, Dad, Marcus interrupted. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but now I do. That money belongs to Rebecca. It was promised to her. I can't build my future by destroying hers. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother as an adult taking responsibility rather than the eternal teenager he'd always seemed. The moment felt pivotal, not just for my college fund, but for our family dynamic that had been unbalanced for so long. Aunt Patricia broke the heavy silence that followed. I think we all need to consider what's happened here. Robert. Eleanor, you've raised a remarkably resourceful daughter who values education and plans for her future. Shouldn't you be celebrating those qualities rather than punishing them? My father looked from face to face, seeing no allies among the family gathered. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. We never meant to hurt you, Rebecca. We just thought. We thought we were making the best decision for the family. By sacrificing my future for Marcus's? I asked quietly. By investing in what seemed like a sure thing, he replied weakly. None of Marcus's ventures have been sure things, I pointed out. But my education is. That degree will stay with me forever, opening doors no matter what happens. Slowly, painfully, consensus emerged from the family gathering. My parents would return the remaining $17,000 to my college fund immediately. Marcus would sign a legally binding agreement to repay the $8,000 he had spent, with a payment schedule Uncle David would help establish. My college fund would be placed in a new account that required my signature for any withdrawals, Despite my not yet being 21, the family meeting ended with tentative reconciliation. My mother hugged me tearfully, whispering apologies. My father shook my hand formally, his way of acknowledging me as an adult worthy of respect rather than a child to be managed. Marcus promised to prove himself more responsible going forward. As relatives departed, Grandma Martha squeezed my hand. "You did well," she murmured. "Standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong." I nodded, exhausted but relieved. The immediate crisis had been averted. But I knew our family would never be quite the same again. Trust, once broken, isn't easily restored. A painful but necessary lesson about family, money, and growing up. The following week was a whirlwind of activity and emotion. True to their word, my parents transferred the remaining $17,000 back to my college fund, now housed in a new account requiring my signature for withdrawals. Uncle David drafted a repayment agreement for Marcus, with monthly installments scheduled over the next 2 years to return the $8,000 he had spent. With my financial situation secure enough to proceed, I submitted my deposit to Northeastern just 1 day before the deadline. The relief of securing my place was immense, but the emotional aftermath of the conflict lingered in every interaction with my family. Conversation at dinner became stilted and careful. My mother tried too hard, asking detailed questions about my college preparations with forced cheerfulness. My father retreated into formality, treating me more like a business associate than a daughter. Marcus made himself scarce, seemingly uncertain of his place in the new family dynamic. I threw myself into practical preparations for college, ordering textbooks, coordinating with my assigned roommate Jasmine through email, shopping for dorm essentials. These tasks provided welcome distraction from the emotional tension at home. Jasmine seemed nice in our exchanges, a psychology major from Chicago with an interest in photography. We agreed on basic room arrangements and who would bring shared items like a mini fridge and microwave. Moving day arrived in late August. My parents rented a small U-Haul for my belongings, and we made the drive to Northeastern in near silence. The campus buzzed with the energy of move-in day, excited students greeting friends, parents carrying boxes and giving last-minute advice, orientation volunteers directing traffic with enthusiastic waves. As we unloaded my belongings, my mother finally broke down, pulling me into a tight hug between the car and the dorm entrance. "I'm so sorry, Rebecca," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We never meant to hurt you. We just got so used to solving Marcus's problems that we stopped seeing clearly." I hugged her back, my own eyes damp. "I know, Mom. But you have to understand how much it hurt to discover you were willing to sacrifice my future that way." "We'll make it right," she promised. "Your father and I have been talking. We're going to sell the lake house to replace the rest of your college fund." The lake house was a small vacation property my parents had purchased 5 years earlier, nothing fancy, but their pride and joy. "Mom, you don't have to do that. We want to," she insisted. "It's the right thing to do. And it's a way to rebuild trust." My father joined us, awkwardly patting my shoulder. "Your mother's right. We made a mistake, a big one. It's on us to fix it. Not just with words but with actions." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. As they helped me set up my dorm room and met Jasmine, who arrived with her parents shortly after us, I could feel a tentative new relationship forming, not the blind trust of a child and her parents, but the more complex, negotiated respect between adults. Saying goodbye was difficult. Despite the conflict, they were still my parents, and I was still taking my first steps into independent adulthood. My mother cried again, my father gave me an awkward hug, and then they were gone, leaving me in a new room with a stranger who would become my roommate. "Your parents seem nice," Jasmine commented as we arranged our desks. "It's complicated," I replied, not ready to share the full story with someone I just met. "We've been through some stuff recently." "I get that," she said easily. "Family is always complicated." The first semester presented challenges I hadn't anticipated. Beyond the academic rigors of business courses, I found myself struggling with emotional fallout from the family conflict. I'd lie awake some nights replaying conversations, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. Other nights, anger would resurface, and I'd find myself furious all over again at how easily they'd been willing to discard my future. Thanksgiving break loomed as a hurdle I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The thought of sitting around a table pretending everything was normal seemed impossible. I considered staying on campus, but Jasmine, who had become a good friend over the months, encouraged me to go home. Avoiding them won't heal anything, she pointed out wisely. Besides, you told me they're selling their vacation house to make things right. That's a pretty serious gesture. She was right. When I arrived home for Thanksgiving, I found subtle but significant changes. My parents had indeed listed the lake house for sale with a pending offer already in place. Marcus had moved back home temporarily, but was working full-time at a tech company while taking night classes in business administration at the community college. I'm learning how businesses actually work before trying to start another one, he explained over pumpkin pie. My boss says I have good ideas but need to understand the fundamentals first. My father, typically reserved about emotions, made a toast at dinner that brought tears to everyone's eyes. To second chances and lessons learned, he said, looking directly at me. And to a daughter brave enough to teach her parents about integrity and keeping promises. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, old patterns threatening to reassert themselves. But there was also a new foundation being built, brick by careful brick. When I returned to Northeastern after the break, I found myself thriving despite the emotional complexity. My finance courses fascinated me, especially those dealing with ethical considerations and financial planning. I joined a student organization focused on financial literacy for underserved communities, finding purpose in helping others understand and protect their economic futures. By Christmas break, my parents had completed the sale of the lake house and restored my college fund to its full original amount. Marcus had made every monthly payment on schedule, small amounts, but consistent, demonstrating a commitment to responsibility I'd never seen from him before. The spring semester brought new opportunities. Through Northeastern's cooperative education program, I secured an internship at a financial advising firm for the summer. When I shared the news at a Sunday family dinner, my parents' pride seemed genuine and untainted by the lingering tension of our conflict. That's wonderful, Rebecca, my mother said warmly. You've always been so focused and determined. Maybe you could give your brother some financial advice, my father added, the small joke an olive branch of sorts. Marcus grinned. I could definitely use it. But seriously, sis, that's great. You're going to be amazing at that. As winter melted into spring, so too did some of the ice between us. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through small, consistent actions that rebuilt trust incrementally. My mother called regularly just to chat, no longer walking on eggshells. My father emailed articles about finance that he thought might interest me, showing respect for my chosen field. Marcus repaid another portion of the money and sent me his revised business plan, genuinely seeking my feedback rather than just approval. By the end of my freshman year, I could look back at the conflict with some perspective. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something educational, a harsh but valuable lesson about family dynamics, financial independence, and standing up for myself. As I packed my dorm room for the summer, Jasmine asked if I was dreading going home. Not dreading, I replied thoughtfully. It's different now. We're all different. Because of the money thing, she asked. Because we had to redefine our relationships, I explained. I'm not just their child anymore, and they're not just my parents. We're adults who hurt each other and are choosing to heal together. It's harder in some ways, but more real. Jasmine nodded. That's growing up, I guess. Seeing your parents as people who make mistakes too. And letting them see you as someone strong enough to stand up for yourself even against them, I added. That's the part one don't think any of us expected. When my parents arrived to help me move back home for the summer, there was an ease between us that hadn't existed since before the conflict. Not the unquestioning trust of childhood, but something more mature and ultimately more durable. A relationship tested by fire and emerging tempered rather than destroyed. 1 year after the confrontation that nearly shattered our family, I sat in the sleek conference room of Blackwell Financial Advisors, where my summer internship had turned into a part-time position during my sophomore year. My supervisor had just assigned me to assist with a new initiative focused on family wealth management and conflict resolution, a specialty that felt almost eerily aligned with my personal experience. We chose you specifically because you mentioned your interest in this area, Mrs. Blackwell explained. Your perspective as a young adult who understands these dynamics could be invaluable. I smiled, thinking about how my personal trauma had unexpectedly shaped my professional path. In the past year, I had thrived academically at Northeastern, making the dean's list both semesters while balancing my studies with work experience. The financial independence I'd fought so hard for had become a cornerstone of my identity and future career. Meanwhile, significant changes had unfolded at home. My parents had sold the lake house, using the proceeds to fully restore my college fund with interest. More importantly, they had fundamentally shifted their approach to both their children. No longer did they automatically rescue Marcus from consequences or dismiss my financial autonomy. Marcus himself had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. After completing 6 months of business courses, he had launched a new venture, one far more modest and sustainable than his previous grand schemes. He had developed a simple app that helped small business owners track expenses and manage basic accounting, targeting local entrepreneurs who couldn't afford professional services. He'd secured a small business loan based on a solid business plan that I had helped him refine, rather than relying on our parents' funding. It's actually making a small profit already, he told me proudly during a video call. His apartment, visible in the background, was modest but organized, another sign of his growing maturity. Not enough to make me rich, but enough to cover costs and pay myself a basic salary. And I haven't missed a single repayment to you. Indeed, he had faithfully adhered to the repayment schedule Uncle David had established, gradually returning the $8,000 he had spent from my college fund. Each payment arrived with a brief note, sometimes just "thanks for believing in me," or "building my credit score and my integrity." My relationship with my parents had evolved into something more balanced. The unquestioning trust of childhood could never be fully restored, but in its place had grown a more mature connection based on mutual respect. My father now occasionally consulted me on financial decisions, acknowledging my expertise in the field I was studying. My mother had joined a parent support group focused on raising financially independent children, sometimes sharing insights from their discussions. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if you hadn't been so prepared," she confessed during one of our coffee dates. "If you hadn't documented everything. If you hadn't saved your own money." "I try not to think about that," I admitted. "But I'm grateful to Grandma Martha for warning me, even though at the time I thought she was being paranoid." My grandmother had become an even more important figure in my life. We met for lunch monthly, where she continued to share her wisdom about finance and family. "The test of character isn't whether you face adversity," she told me once. "It's how you respond to it. You responded with strength, and your parents and brother eventually responded with growth. That's all anyone can ask for." The experience had inspired me to help others facing similar situations. I had started a blog about financial literacy for college students, sharing anonymized versions of my own story alongside practical advice about documentation, legal protections, and building financial independence. The blog had gained a modest following, with regular comments from young people navigating their own family financial conflicts. I had also joined a support group for survivors of family financial abuse, finding solidarity and healing among others who understood the unique pain of being betrayed by those meant to protect you. In turn, I offered guidance based on my own journey, helping others assemble documentation and explore their options. As I contemplated my future career path, I found myself increasingly drawn to ethical family financial planning, helping families navigate complex monetary relationships without the damage mine had experienced. The scars of betrayal had transformed into purpose, a way to prevent others from suffering similarly or to help them recover if they did. "You know what I've learned from all this?" I told Jasmine, now my roommate in a small off-campus apartment. "Financial independence isn't just about having money. It's about having boundaries, documentation, and the courage to enforce both when necessary." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. "And it seems like your whole family learned something valuable, even though it was painful." She was right. Through the crucible of conflict, we had all been transformed. My parents had confronted their pattern of enabling Marcus while discounting my needs. Marcus had finally faced the consequences of his actions and begun building a sustainable adult life. And I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed, the ability to stand firm against those I loved when my future was at stake. The rebuilt college fund now sat in an account requiring my signature for any withdrawals, a tangible symbol of my new autonomy. More importantly, I had proven to myself that I could weather a profound betrayal and emerge stronger, with boundaries intact and a clearer vision of my worth. As I approached my 21st birthday, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Trust, once broken, leaves permanent fault lines. but those fault lines had been carefully reinforced. The relationship rebuilt with stronger materials. Honesty, respect, and accountability. The greatest lesson, I wrote in my journal that night, is that preparation and foresight are the best protection. But the second greatest lesson is that forgiveness becomes possible when accompanied by genuine change. My parents and brother have changed. And so have I. I closed my journal and looked out the window at the Boston skyline, feeling a sense of peace that had been hard-won through tears and confrontation. The future stretched before me, full of possibility, a future I had fought for and secured through my own foresight and courage. Have you ever had to protect yourself financially from those who should have been protecting you? The betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from family, doesn't it? Drop a comment sharing your experience or how you would have handled my situation. Did I do the right thing by confronting my parents? Or should I have found another way? And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for your financial future, even against those you love. Remember, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best isn't distrust, it's wisdom. Thank you for listening to my story. And I wish you strength and clarity in all your financial relationships.